Hey, welcome guys. Welcome to the Young Adults for Christ podcast. It is episode number 8, you said.
Yeah.
But episode number 1 for 2022. But episode 2 in our part 1 and 2 series with Zenzo in studio with us. So good to have you again, Zenzo. How are you doing?
No, great. Thank you. Obviously, Happy New Year. I think, just praying for a blessed year. But happy to be back on the podcast and excited just to, carry on from where we left off.
Good, man. It's really good to have you back. Yeah, when we last heard from you, you told us about your life story, about coming to faith, and it was just so epic. We thought we could contain it all in like 35 minutes. Yeah. But I remember at about the 20-minute mark, I looked at my watch and I thought, there's no way we're going to get through. There's so much gold here. We're going to have to do a part 2. So I'm super stoked that we get to straddle the year. We ended the year with you. We're starting the year with you. And we're just super stoked to have you. And if you are listening to this podcast, thanks for joining us. If you are listening, this is definitely the part 2 of a conversation. So you need to go back to part 1 before you can carry on. It's the most previous episode. Anything from your side, Seb?
Yeah, no, I think Happy New Year to you too as well.
Thanks, brother.
And to everyone listening. And I'm just excited to have Zenzo back because part 1 was, it was really cool. And I enjoyed hearing more about who you are and who you are with Jesus, because I think it's 2 different people. And we get the privilege of knowing who you are with Jesus on a daily basis. But now we get to hear a bit of before, and now today we get to dig into a bit deeper, what it looks like, what it looked like in that time when you were wrestling. So that's going to be really cool.
So, bro, maybe as we can catch people up to sort of refresh their minds, the guys who have listened to part 1 already. So you told us a little bit about your story. You're saved out of a new age system of kind of faith. Went to school, experienced a bit of persecution there. Pulled through to Rosemary Church because you found you needed community to express your faith. You've been serving in our youth ministry as a youth leader. You're involved in the young adults. You're just like a fully plugged in person. So maybe, that's like a very, very short catch up. But maybe just remind people who you are, what do you do, and what do you love about life?
Yeah, so for most people know, but if they don't, I'm Zenzo Nkosi. I wasn't born into a Christian home, like I mentioned in the first part of the podcast. So I was born into a system of New Ageism, and like I explained last time, I believe actually really demonic belief system, and I just kind of went into why. It's painted as, the Bible says like Satan comes as an angel of light, and like I just made reference to how law of attraction and basically trying to exalt myself to become a god, and with things that I used to believe, and I generally thought and believed that these things were true. So I grew up in that system from about when I was born up until I think my grade 11 year, which is when I moved to boarding school in the Cape, and it was like the first time I had a bit of independence of thought. So I was wrestling a lot with like what I believed, especially because everything, like law of attraction and supposedly creating your life and making it the way you want it to be, kind of manufacturing everything to work out in your will and your way. My life wasn't panning out like that. In fact, the opposite was happening with illness. Like I said, I got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and I had like the worst experience you could, every side effect you can imagine from medication, and almost lost my life. And so that kind of led me on a path, I guess, of a bit of doubt, depression, like I mentioned, suicidal ideation, and just hopelessness. And I guess, like I said, in desperation. And looking back, I do think it was the Spirit calling me. I don't necessarily think I went and sought for God, but he met me where I was, and I said a prayer when I was at my wit's end, just asking for the God of the universe, like you mentioned last time, which was very generic, just to reveal himself to me. And the next day, literally the very next day, my dad, who's obviously the one who introduced us to the system, basically called me and said, look, for the past 16 years of your life, I'm sorry, made a mistake, found the God of the Bible, and I guess that was basically the journey, the beginning of my journey to the faith. So that happened in about 2018, and like you said, joined Rosebank towards the end of 2020, and I guess the rest is history. I've just been fully plugged in, found a church family, and now I actually know what it's like to be part of a community of believers. And so that's my story, I guess, in a nutshell.
That's good, bro. So something when you were talking last time, which I was like, I want to dial into this, and obviously here we are. That's why we're dialing in. Was you spoke about you coming to faith, needing a community, found Rosebank Union Church. Maybe you can tell us how did you find Rosebank? Was it online or?
So I actually live like 2 minutes away. Like I sometimes can even I walk to church sometimes. So yeah, I'd always seen Rosebank, you know. I'd always drive past it, you know, on my way back from school. So it was always, even before as a Christian, a place that I knew of. I had absolutely no idea, obviously, what the people in the church believed, what was going on there. It was just kind of like a monument that you would pass, you know, like you see on your way to back home, you see RUC, you see whatever, George Lee Park. It's just one of those things that I saw. But when I became a Christian, like I said, I started to become very convicted about not actually being plugged into community. And one thing about me, even while I was in a community, I was very passionate about reading the Word. I think the Spirit really stirred something in me to be somebody who was a man of the book, you know, to read the Scriptures and try and grow in my faith. But I realized, like, even with that, like, I still felt very weak and alone. I felt like I was the only believer in the whole world. And like I said, conviction really came when I started to read about passages like Hebrews 10, 24 to 25, about not neglecting fellowship with the saints. And just as I read, especially the New Testament, just seeing how you saved into community, and like I think I mentioned last time, most of the New Testament epistles and like letters are written to churches. And so I was like, why am I not a part of this? Like I said, I did have bad experiences with the church before, but I was now convicted, especially in terms of sin, because I had no one keeping me accountable for my sin. And I felt like, I should have someone that I should, confess my sins to, but also have someone who's going to be able to encourage me in the faith, someone much more wise and mature in the faith who can help me grow. And so I think there was a bit of pride because, like I said, because I was reading a lot, I felt like I know it all. Like looking back, I do really think like I knew it all because I am really passionate about theology. So I think the head knowledge, and Paul also says this, it puffs you up. So I did feel like, why do I need church if I can just go straight to the book myself? But like I said, that conviction came towards the end of 2020. And then, that's why I found myself at RUC and been serving now as well, which has also been a blessing because I've been able to use my spiritual gifts. But also, on the other hand, I've had other people's spiritual gifts impact my life so much and help me grow like so much in the faith that wouldn't have been possible if I was, still by myself.
So from like, there's the monument in your church in the corner, like a fantastic position. You drive past us, you know us. You come in, you're like, I've been convicted. Let me explore this thing of not neglecting to gather the saints, as some of you do, as the Hebrews author puts it. So now you came in mid-pandemic, and yet here you sit like one of the most connected guys within our young adults community within the church. Like, all the pastors know who you are. All the guys on staff, like, we know who you are. Not because you're good at, you're like, you're plugged in, you're part of the community, but yet you came in mid-pandemic when like social distancing was a thing, mask wearing was a thing. How did you find such good community? Because often people push back against a church like Rosebank Union, a big church, we are a big church, and say, I can't find community, I'll never find community, it's an unfriendly church. I mean, some of this might be very true, but your experience isn't that. So I'd love to hear about it. Like, how did you get so plugged in?
I think I was also at the point in my life where I'd stopped looking for what I thought was like the perfect church, because in my head, like, the perfect church is, at least it was in my head, like, believes everything I believe, does things the way I want it, sings these hymns, doesn't do this. Like, that was me like in my mind, like, the church, that's what the church is. And I think I came to the realization is that firstly, that church doesn't exist, and if it did exist, like, it wouldn't be a perfect church, because these are my personal like desires, and probably like prideful as well desires, like, and even though they might be theologically sound on some level, like, that's not what church is. You don't go to church for yourself. It's not only for you. Like, you go there to be fed, but also to feed and use your spiritual gifts. It's it's like an exchange. We're all there as a family, and we all benefit from one another. So I think like I said, because I was getting convicted and really started to actually study, like, okay, what does it mean to be part of a community? What does it mean to go to church? This idea of the perfect church was completely erased. In fact, I don't know if I shared it last time, but there was a quote that I found pretty funny that somebody shared, like, there's no such thing as a perfect church, but if you ever find one, don't go because you'll ruin it. So
that's really good.
You know, so I kind of thought like, okay, well, this fantasy place that I've kind of imagined in my head doesn't exist. So rather than looking for a perfect church, I'm going to look for biblically sound church where, you know, the word is preached, sound doctrine, where I can expect to be fed, I can expect to be held accountable. And yeah, so I think my standard for joining a church just became very basic. Like, what does God want from his church? And when I came to Rosebank, I wouldn't say I was skeptical, but I was kind of like, I didn't know what to expect because I'd been to so many churches where I'd been so disappointed because those things weren't met. So I guess I did come just in expectation, but I was very, I think, intentional, just getting to know, like, who are the people in this church, like, who are the pastors. And Richard was also coming in at the time that I was coming in, so he'd only preached one sermon, I think, and then we went into lockdown. So when I came to, like, the membership like classes or whatever, he was there, and I'd already been emailing him before. And I think there was actually a moment where I watched a sermon by the pastor who was here before. Was it Lee? Yeah. And it was about, funny enough, the RUC YouTube channel actually uploaded it again, like sometime late last year. But yeah, I watched that sermon, and it was basically preaching from a passage in John where Jesus says, I've written these things that you may know that you have salvation. I can't remember if it's the Gospel of John or, you know, First John. But
is it at the end of the Gospel of John?
It might be. But I just remember the passage saying, you know, like, I've written these things that you may know. And he was basically just preaching on the assurance of salvation.
Sure.
And it was literally after watching that sermon on the website that I thought, like, okay, I don't need anything more because I've seen what I've needed to see and I've heard everything. So I'd been emailing Richard. I'd come and I met him in person. I met Pastor Ndaba. I'd shared my story with him. And I think, like I said, I was just very intentional about speaking to the pastors, being open, and, like, getting this church experience. I didn't really know how do you do church. So I just went and spoke to the people who, you know, are on the ground. And then also met Dave, who encouraged me to come to youth. And I think that was, had that not happened, I probably wouldn't be as plugged in as I am now. And I wouldn't say I'm a shy person. Like, people know me, I'm, like, very loud and outgoing, but I was a bit nervous to, like, join a new space with people I didn't know. But when he did encourage me to come to youth, even though I'd, like, for the first, you know, like, maybe 2 times, I didn't really speak to much people besides Dave, and some would come to me as well and speak. I remember, like, Luke coming once and just being like, hey, can I pray for you? Amy as well coming to speak to me, and just being very welcoming and open and loving, and just showing me, like, this is a place where we don't have to have known you for months and months. Like, we love you because we know you're a brother in Christ. So for me, and that was, like I said, I'd never been to church. I was like, wow, this is what the church experience is about. And then I remember the next time I came, Lungi, who's now, like, one of my closest friends, and somebody that also holds me accountable, and who's just been a real inspiration in my faith. He came and he was like, oh, you know, Pastor White told me there's a new guy that I might get along with who likes football as well. And I think it was from then he just offered me, like, lifts to and from church, and then we built a real bond. So I felt like, wow, this is what it's like to be part of the family of God. I didn't have to prove myself worthy of being part of the clique or the group. Sure. I just came and these people loved me, and they've expressed, like, their spiritual gifts of, like, hostility.
Oh, that's
not a spiritual gift.
The good church is known for, right?
That's definitely not fruits of the spirit. But like hospitality, love, encouragement. And then when I'd spoken to them and shared my story, because I remember Dave did ask me to share a bit of my story at one of the youth like evenings, I thought, like, wow, I could actually also use my gifts potentially to serve in the youth. I was like, I know I'm still new, but I do feel like I could offer something. And so, yeah, obviously Dave was heading out at that time, but I did speak to Ryan, and he was like, yeah, I would love to have you on board. And so I found by plugging myself in, like, into service, because, like I said, we come to church to serve, but also to be served. Like, it's a mutual exchange. I found, like, the connections I made with everyone was like incredible. Like I can go and sit next to anyone in church and I won't really feel like out of place or I'm impeding on somebody's space or like except this guy, but that's just because you smell, not because I'm joking. But yeah, so I do feel like I can have a conversation with anyone, and I didn't feel like the pastor was some celebrity that I was inaccessible. I couldn't speak to him, I couldn't question him. There have been times even when I said to, like after a sermon, I go to Richard and be like, what do you mean by that? Because I have a different understanding, and like pick his brain on things, and he wouldn't be like, don't question me, like I'm a man of God, whatever. Like, you know, he waits there, and after every sermon I can go speak to him, and even times where he'd be like, oh, that's a good point, I didn't think about that, I actually think of applying that next time. And I'll be like, wow, you know, I've never actually had that experience of where the pastor sees himself as, yes, somebody who's being called to preach the word and has authority that, you know, as a church we submit to, but not in a way that's like, I don't take correction, I don't take, you know, accountability for anything. And so, yeah, I think definitely getting plugged in, and like you said, Sebastian, that is a really good way just to be part of the family, or feel at least connected. As it wasn't easy because I felt a bit shy, like, you know, what are these people going to think? Are they going to think I'm like arrogant, just thinking I can come in and start leading? But that wasn't the case at all. Like, I found that I grew so much, and my relationships with everyone at the church grew so much. And I went from feeling like someone who didn't know any Christians at all, and I felt like the only Christian in the world, to feeling like I had a rock, like a foundation with me, and I felt strengthened in my faith. I didn't really fear going out into the world because I knew like I've got brothers and sisters that are praying for me as well. So yeah, that's I guess been the journey, and it feels longer than like a year and a couple of months, but because it was like literally October 2020. Yeah. But
13, 14 months ago, sure.
Yeah. So
so cool, man.
But I think that's such a cool testimony to what serving in a church can do, because like Brett said at the beginning of that little question was like being in what some would consider a mega church, people more than 1,000 congregants. I think it's easy to get lost, and people feel like we cliquey and all these things. But a way to get in is to serve, to be down on the ground doing the things, and being a part of that community, even if you are shy, even if you don't think you're ready. Get in. God will prepare you in the way that He finds fit. So I think that's such a cool testimony to that. Exactly, is like you came and you just started serving, just started loving over God's people, and through that you've been able to find community. So yeah. But I think from the last podcast, you mentioned a little snippet of like a conversation in the boarding house. I wouldn't call it a conversation. I'd call it more like a brawl, but hey, that's just me. You called it a conversation, but it sounded more like a fight euphemism to me. So
so this is when I was still quite new in like my faith. There's actually like a phrase that people use, like when you're recently saved and you kind of have like your eyes open to everything, like the cage stage, where you just kind of like the cage stage. Yeah.
Cage stage.
Yeah. So it's basically like if anything's like bad doctrine or like not sound, whereas before you'd kind of just like let it slide. Now you're like, actually no, that's wrong, and then you kind of like you're just really quick to like jump on things because you've just got this newfound knowledge about. So I think for me, someone already like ready to jump into conversation, into debates, into discussions, like I did find myself. And looking back now as well, like, was speaking the truth, but not speaking the truth in love always. So I did, like, looking back, I do think like, oh wow, I could have done that better. But I also think like it was good because I was so bold. Like looking back, I was like, yo, like I'm not even that bold now. Sometimes, like, you know, I was just ready to share the gospel with people around me, and I wasn't really scared of what people thought. And I think it was because I was just like, I'd found this treasure. Like I felt like I was doing people a disservice by not sharing like what I'd found out, especially because they had known me as the other guy, Zenzo, the new age guy. Like they hadn't known me as a Christian. So when I came, like I think a lot of people were taken aback. Like I said, even the teachers were like, is this guy on medication? Like what's going on? Because I just changed so drastically and like literally overnight. So I remember in times in the boarding house, like there was an occasion where there was this boy, a Namibian boy. So we had it was an international school, so we had a lot of Namibians, we had a lot of we had Belgians, we had French people, we had Colombians. So it was like a lot of different like nationalities. And in the boarding house, there were like quite a few Namibians as well. But anyway, that's not really relevant to the story. But he did come into the room. There was quite a big room. My old room, the room that I had the year before, because this is like towards the beginning of matric. So he'd come into the room, and I wish I could tell you like how the conversation started. But like I said, I was at that part. Like if somebody brought up something about the Bible, about like I was so ready to talk about it, so ready to defend it. So I'm assuming somehow that came about, and I could see like he was really hostile. Like he really didn't like this whole Jesus thing. He didn't like Christianity, and he made it quite clear. And I just said to him like I'm a Christian, so when you say like you hate Christianity or whatever, or you hate this, you hate Jesus, you hate this, like I hope you know like that's a direct attack on me, because this is what I believe in and this is my Lord. And so like we can agree to disagree, but I'm not just gonna be like it's okay for you to hate Jesus, because there are consequences, you know, for that. And I was basically telling him like I don't even want to fight you, but like, you know, the Bible says that we've all sinned and fallen short of God's glory. And I was just like you, like a hater of God as well. Like, but there is hope, there's salvation, and that's why Jesus came. He came to die for the very same people that persecuted and hated him. Yeah. So I was basically sharing that with him, and somehow like it turned from that into like a gospel opportunity now. So now I'm preaching the gospel to him, and so now I look around and the room's like starting to fill up, because I mean you could probably fit the whole boarding house in one room. There was like people sitting on cupboards, people sitting on beds, like on desks. So now before I know it, like the whole room is filled, because now he's starting to get like really hostile. And he was like, you know, I hate Christians, I hate Jesus, and I hate the way you guys think like you're better than everyone. And like I said, I kept going back to my testimony, like I can understand why you think that, because Christians, you know, we are also sinners. It's not like we don't sin anymore. But I came from a life of like hating God, loving the things of the world as well, and yet I was still saved. And next thing, like it just got into this thing like, but why should I follow God's rules? Like why should I have to do this, that? And then I asked him like, so you're telling me it was like, oh, he mentioned like your rules, the rules in your Bible are so stupid. Like why would you why would God tell me not to sleep with my neighbor's wife or whatever? Then I was like, so you want to sleep with your neighbor's wife? And he was like, I can if I want. Yeah, why not? And he was just like, and I remember in that
it's quite an easy rule for us.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you think like, even if you're not a Christian, I think it's a pretty, I mean, self-explanatory. So it was like, in that moment, I went from kind of like, I want to beat this guy in debate, I want to like show that he's wrong in front of everyone, to actually feeling like really heartbroken. And I remember when he said that, I actually felt like really heartbroken, because I was like, wow, this is what it's like to be lost. And I almost forgot that, because I was once there, like in that position. So I was looking at him and I was like, wow, like that was me. And so I said to him, like, I'm only telling you these things because I love you. Like, you really have to hate someone to believe that there are consequences, eternal consequences, for actively rejecting Jesus and the gospel and still not share anything with him. You know, there was like an analogy, like if somebody's in the car and there's a train coming towards them, initially you knock on the window and ask them politely to get out. But if they keep refusing, there's a moment where you kind of smash the window and pull them out, because if you don't, they're going to get hit by the train. And I kind of felt like I was in that situation. So I was pleading with him and just telling him, and to the point where he was just like, I hate you, and I hate you because you're a Christian, and I hate your Jesus. Yeah. And I remember like him saying that to me, and the next thing, like a few of the boys in the boarding house were just like mocking, like, you know, uttering like blasphemous things, coming in and like mocking me. So I kind of like, you know, wiped the dust off my feet, left the room, and I went back to my bedroom, and I was just, I think I was more upset, not at how things had panned out, because I mean, I'd been in, you know, it's only like if you're in a boarding school, obviously like guys are always in altercation. So it wasn't like because of the altercation, but it was just like, wow, there's honestly nothing I can do in and of myself. I have to pray that the Spirit works in him like it worked in me. And I remember other times when people tried sharing the gospel with me, and I reacted in a similar way, and it was almost like God showing me, like, look at what I took you out of. Funny enough, that very same guy. So in Matrix, you could have your own room or you'd share with someone. Funny story. The next next term, I came back. When I came back, there was like stuff in my room, and my roommate had left. He went to go join another room, so I had now the room to myself, which was like really nice because I could do my quiet times, I could pray, and I didn't really have like somebody else there, like, you know, who would bother me. I come back from like I think it was the third term now. I come back, there's like bags and stuff on the other bed, which was like my spare bed because nobody else had the room. I go downstairs, I speak to the matron. I was like, what's going on? Why is somebody's stuff on my bed? The very same guy who said he hates me for being a Christian was put into my room.
Sure.
So now I had to share a room with him.
Oh, no.
Like the most intimate, like sleeping in the same room as this person, like whatever, for like a whole term. And I remember being like so angry, like, God, how could you put the guy who hates me in my room? But I do think it was like, in that moment, it was also a time for me just to be a witness for Christ. And remember that this is like, these guys aren't my enemies. This is the mission field, you know? But yeah, so that was one of the more hostile experiences, but...
That's wild.
And that guy now?
Actually, I haven't heard from him, but like, I don't have anything towards him. I think like, I was obviously at the time really offended, but now looking back, like I said, I felt more like, Lord, please work in his heart. Like, I would love one day for him to come and say like, yo, remember that time when I abused you in the boarding school, but like now I'm a Christian. Like, that's
maybe
my prayer.
after this podcast.
Maybe if you're watching.
Hearing
That's good, bro. Something else you said last time I thought was funny, and I wanted to pick up on. As you were joking about in your soccer club. I asked you a question about like playing football with your guys, and then like how you be a Christian in that space. I remember like finds evenings and girls and jokes. And one of the things you said was like now they make jokes about how I'm never gonna find someone sleeping around. But since then, you have a girlfriend. Not from sleeping around.
No, not from that.
Disclaimer. A wonderful young woman from our church. How did that happen, and how's this young fresh relationship going? Obviously, it's a public forum, so you don't have to go into too much detail here. But how's it going?
Wait, hold on. Do people know?
It depends on who you mean by people.
Like in general.
Are you hiding it?
No.
There you go. So it's not a problem.
No.
So we're not getting in trouble, right?
No.
Okay,
not getting in trouble. That is pretty funny. Seeing as I was like, now look, guys, look at me. What are you saying now?
And just see how the wedding rings have fallen off his fingers. Since
wedding
then,
rings.
What wedding rings?
Yeah, what is
a ring?
One of those promise rings.
I don't know what it is. Before even girls were involved.
No. Yeah, like a massive blessing. I think. Obviously dating isn't, at least for Christians, and I don't think it ever should be, but I know specifically for Christians, it's not like a joke. It's not a game. In fact, I did speak to her dad before even formally asking out, and he even said the same thing. Like, if you don't have the intention of marriage at the end goal of this, then like don't waste your time. You know.
So just a clarification point. So you're not saying if you date someone, or are you saying if you date someone you have to marry them?
I mean, like, I'm not God. So I can't ever say like this is what's going to happen. Yeah. But I feel like what I'm saying is there needs to be intentionality behind relationships. You know.
That's good. It's a good clarification point, because I think sometimes Christians we go one of two ways, right? Like if you date, you marry. And we're not saying that, but we're also saying don't just go date people for fun and be like, just kind of a year fling here, a 6 month fling
exactly.
There.
And I mean,
because that hurts. I think that hurts your heart a lot.
It does.
Not the people alone, like you yourself.
Yeah, both of you. And I think like, it's dangerous as well, because like if that is somebody else's spouse in the future, like you need to like have that in mind. Like, wow, I could actually be potentially hurting somebody else's spouse in the future. Like it is. Obviously, it's not a life and death situation. You know, we can't control every circumstance. But I think intentionality, like I said, is just important. So, I mean, it took me a couple of months actually just to formally go and actually now, okay, I'm going to pursue this person. Apparently, I was not discreet according to Seb, but nobody knew.
I didn't see it coming.
There we go.
I thought it was very discreet.
Thank you.
I thought you did it very well. Yeah, but I'm on the outside.
Yeah. Doesn't matter. Everyone says that after the fact, like, oh, we knew all along. But when the process is there, nobody ever knows anything.
I knew. You didn't even have to tell me. I just knew.
Okay. Okay, of course. But no, yeah, she's a lovely girl, godly girl as well. And I think that was the most important thing, is looking for someone who's not gonna like take me backwards in my faith, but someone who's gonna push me even further than I am now in terms of loving God and honoring Him.
That's good. So
yeah, is a big blessing and something I do take seriously, not just like, we'll see where it goes. If it flops, cool. If like, yeah, I mean, there is obviously, like I said, intentionality there, but yeah, also just making the distinction, like dating someone is not like marriage as well. Like, you're not married to this person. So I think boundaries are also really important, and involving other people in the relationship, like other people from the church, other people who've been in relationships longer, who are wiser, who could be like, this isn't such a good idea. You know, when we did this happened, or this is a good idea. We believe it's beneficial for these reasons, ABC.
Yeah.
But it is still early days, but yeah, very happy, and I feel very blessed. Yeah.
Good, man.
Sure. I'm happy to hear you in a relationship. Maybe one day I can join you.
Join the club one day.
We'll pray for you, bro.
Praying for you, woman of God.
It's been an honor having you.
Thanks, guys.
And I think we've really learned from you, which is cool, and I hope other people have too. Yeah, it's been an honor having you as the first guest times 2. Yeah.
First and second guest.
I think when we do couch sessions, we just plan an hour, 10 minutes. Bro.
There we go.
Yeah, once.
But
one shot.
We'll definitely split that for you guys, because hour, 10 minutes, one sitting. Hey, that's a bit rough, eh?
Not when you're listening to a story like this.
Yeah, no, maybe Zenzo can keep them engaged.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, but bro, like, just so encouraged by your life. I think something you said in the beginning, or when you were just telling us part of your life, about how, you know, what's it called? The cage stage.
Yeah.
It's actually so true, man. Like, when you first come to faith, that like zealous, that zeal that you have for the Lord, and you fight for things.
Yeah.
And I think there is a softening that happens. Obviously, there's like that cage stage, you soften, but to hold on to that truth and let that zeal continue to push you through. I think that's where, like, I see you now, you know, you're still zealous for the Lord, but you've softened, and there's love, and I've only known you for a year now, but like, there's compassion for people, and a joy, and I hope to see people move forward in their faith, and you've been a Christian for like 3 years, man. So you're just such an encouragement. So thank you.
Praise God. Thank you so much.
And there's none of that hostility.
Yeah.
That you spoke
just
of.
Hospitality.
Just hospitality.
Just hospitality now.
Thanks,
the
man.
hostility is lost.
No.
It's been an honor to watch it as well.
Yeah, praise God.
Yeah. So thank you, Brett.
Thank you so much.
And thanks to you guys listening, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks.
Peace.